The subject of Scott Soames's 2002 book Beyond Rigidity is some unfinished work in Kripke's naming and necessity. One of them is the status of theoretical identifications. Kripke says theoretical identities, according to the conception I advocate, are generally identities involving two rigid designators, and therefore are examples of the necessary a posteriori. So for Kripke, these propositions are necessary, which means that if they are true, they are necessarily true. The reason is that they involve in two rigid designators. For example, this sentence involves in two rigid designators. One is cat and the other one is animal. And same for this one, it involves in gold and the element with atomic number 79. These are both rigid designators. Scott Soames asks several questions to understand Kripke's thesis. First one is that what is it for a predicate to be a rigid designator? We know what is it for a proper name to be a rigid designator. But now the question is that what is it for a predicate to be a rigid designator? Are natural kind predicates like cat, tiger, animal, gold, and light rigid? What is it for a sentence containing a pair of natural kind predicates to count as a theoretical identity sentence? Are such sentences necessary if true? Let's first look at the distinction between predicates and singular terms. Let's see if natural kind terms are semantically singular or not. For one view, they may be semantically singular, and this may be in two different ways. By the way, semantic singularity means that the linguistic expression refers to one single object. Like Aristotle, the expression Aristotle, proper name Aristotle, is semantically singular because it refers to one single object, Aristotle. So, if natural kind terms are semantically singular, then water, cat, or any other natural kind term refers to one single object, and this may be in two different ways. First one is a nominalist approach, according to which natural kind terms refers to mereological sums, like the water, this natural kind term water, refers to the water, that is the mereological sum of all bits of water. And the problem with this view is that it fails to account count terms, such as human, tiger, dog. You know the distinction between count terms and mass terms. Water is a mass term, human is a count term. When you add two human beings, that does not make another human being. That's the problem with this view. The second approach is the traditional Platonist approach, according to which natural kind terms refers to abstract universal types. The problem with this view is that often we learn what it means to say that A is an instance of the kind or property P, like A is an instance of the kind or property being water, or by being told or figuring out that necessarily A is an instance of P. A is an instance of water. If and only if A is water. So we learn A is an instance of the property of being water, this abstract stuff. If and only if A is water. So where the letter A is P, A is water, this simple sentence, A is water, is something we already understand and take as basic. So we take this one, this predicative one, as basic, not this property or this highly abstract version as basic. In order to understand this part, we use this sentence, A is P, simple subject predicate sentence, where natural kind terms are used as a predicate. So then Soames claims that natural kind terms are not semantically singular. The nominal use of these natural kind terms is understood in terms of the predicative use, and not vice versa. Let's see some examples that makes it clear. This sentence involves in a general term or natural kind term, man. I think we may take man as a natural kind term. But the important point here is that man is a general term. And this sentence does not really mean that the abstract object that we refer by man, that's the man or that abstract object, has the property of being mortal. Rather, what we mean by this sentence is that anything that is man, as you see, we use man as a predicate because anything that is man is mortal. For gold is malleable, we do not mean that there is an abstract object, gold, that has this property. Rather, what we mean is that in our domain, all entities, if they are gold, for all entities, if they are gold, then they are malleable. So again, gold is used as a predicate here. You may add other examples. So then again, we have these questions that we already asked. And to answer these questions, we have Soames actually proposes two different strategies. First one is to define concept of rigidity for predicates. And the second one is to relate each predicate to a corresponding singular term and then solve. So the second one is a two-step solution. First one is a one-step solution. In the rest of this section, I will consider only the first one. So we are going to define a concept of rigidity for predicates. A predicate P is rigid, like a predicate cat is rigid, is cat is rigid, if and only if P, that predicate P, has the same extension at any word in which it has a non-null extension. I think you know what extension means. Extension is the set of objects that fall under the predicate in question. So like the extension of the predicate is cat is the set of all cats. So then this definition says a predicate like cat is rigid. If it is rigid, then it means that cat has the same extension at any word, any possible word that you stipulate. But nothing guarantees this because in a possible word, there may be more cats than the actual one. So according to this definition, no predicate would be rigid. That's the problem with this proposal. Let's go on with the second proposal. A predicate P is rigid if and only if there is a unique property which it stands for that determines its extension at each possible word. So according to this one, predicates might have different extensions at different possible words. Because what is important here is that if a predicate is rigid, then there is a unique property. So according to this definition, cat is a rigid designator, but is a car. That's not a natural kind term, and for Kripke it is not a rigid designator, but according to this definition, this proposal, is a car would be rigid designator as well, because there is a unique property that determines its extension at each possible word. So all predicates turn out to be rigid. The first one is too restrictive and the second one is too liberal. For this reason, Soames proposes a more sophisticated, precise rigidity definition. That is, a predicate P is rigid if and only if it is an essentialist predicate. So let's see what is an essentialist predicate. This definition says cat is rigid if and only if cat is an essentialist predicate. Let's see what it is. A predicate P of English is essentialist if and only if necessarily any individual, that is P, could not have existed without being P expresses a truth. So this part is important. Cat is a rigid designator means that necessarily any individual, any cat could not have existed without being a cat. So in any possible world, if any cat could not have existed without being a cat, then we can say cat is a rigid designator, or cat is an essentialist predicate, so it is rigid. The important part here is that when you say any individual, you mean any individual in the actual world. This is the proposed definition, but let's go on with this definition. According to this one, is a dog is rigid, but is a philosopher is not rigid, because Socrates might have existed without being a philosopher. But according to Kripke's account, a dog could not have existed without being a dog. So with this definition, we are able to distinguish rigid predicates from non-rigid predicates, natural kind terms from other predicates. That's the good thing. But there is one problem. This is a theoretical identification sentence, right? In a conditional form. This may be in a biconditional form as well. If A is cat, B is animal, this sentence says cats are animals. Let's say A and B are rigid designators. Then, according to this definition, we have this conclusion. For all objects in the actual world, it is necessary that if that object is an A, then that object is a B. In modal semantics, we call this form dere necessity, because dere means of the object. So this is a dere necessity. So the necessity is about objects. I mean, the objects necessarily have this property. But what is expected is not the dere necessity. Rather, it is the dictor necessity of the sentence proposition. Necessity of the sentence, right? Of sentence, dictum. So what we expect is this one. And the difference is that the rigidity of the predicates guarantees that any object that is both A and B in the actual world must be both A and B in every world in which it exists. This is the dere part. So then it does not guarantee that those sentences are not necessary. So then the rigidity definition does not guarantee the dictor necessity. You may see this actualism versus possibilism debates. That's important to understand this distinction. So That's the end of this part. Thanks.